When the alien first appeared in my apartment, I thought it was some kind of prank, or maybe a hallucination brought on by too much late-night gaming and leftover pizza. It wasn't. It stood, or hovered, or whatever it did, on the edge of my kitchen with an intensity that suggested serious business, which made me reconsider a few things about my life choices. The thing was blind. Literally, no eyes, just smooth gray ridges where eyes might be. And yet it claimed it could analyze the human mind across galaxies. I laughed, partly because the words sounded ridiculous, partly because I had nothing else to say without immediately calling security or a therapist. "I have observed you," it said, its voice calm, mechanical, almost clinical. "Analysis complete. You exhibit patterns consistent with suboptimal life management. Strategic intervention required." I blinked. Suboptimal life management? That was a polite way of saying I ate frozen burritos, binge-watched shows until 3 a.m., and once got my cat stuck in a tree for 45 minutes because I was too lazy to get a ladder. Okay, I said cautiously. "Do I need to, sign something?" "No," it said. "Consent is irrelevant to optimization." It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening, but the tone carried the kind of confidence usually reserved for people who successfully talk someone out of selling their house for pennies on the dollar. I felt slightly insulted, which I realized later was the first time I actually noticed the alien's effect on me. The first analysis was both hilarious and terrifying. I tried to brush it off when it started taking notes on my morning routine. Toothbrushing observed. Average efficiency, 68%. Angle of bristles suboptimal for plaque removal. Recommend adjustment. Increase brush rotation frequency by 17.3 degrees per second. I glanced at the toothbrush in my hand. I had no idea what 17.3 degrees per second meant. I laughed nervously. It didn't laugh. Next, it followed me into the kitchen as I made coffee. It watched me pour, stir, sip. "Caffeine intake adequate for cognitive stimulation," it said, "but timing suboptimal relative to circadian peaks. Recommend ingestion at 0723 hours instead of 0727 hours. I stopped stirring and stared. The idea that someone, or something, was timing my coffee like a military operation was absurd enough to make me snort. I dropped a little coffee on the counter. It made a note. "Spillage reduces operational efficiency by 0.7%, it said. I stared at it, then at the counter. I honestly considered asking if I could sue for emotional damages caused by this level of scrutiny. It didn't wait for a response. Observation complete. Next, strategic life integration. I should have been terrified then, but instead, I was curious. And that curiosity is exactly what doomed me. The alien moved in 2 days later under the guise of continuous assessment for maximal life optimization. It packed nothing. Claimed it didn't need things humans needed, which made sense, I guess, since it didn't sleep or eat, or maybe it did, but it was nothing like food as I understood it. Soon, everything in my apartment was rearranged. Couch rotated slightly to maximize relaxation efficiency. Kitchen utensils reordered by nutritional impact priority. And even the placement of my shoes was analyzed for human traffic flow optimization. I tried passive resistance. I hid things. I unplugged my blender. I moved the couch back to its original position. Each time, the alien calmly countered with measures so ridiculous I couldn't help but admire them. One morning, I woke to find my coffee mug taped to the counter with a note. Prevented strategic displacement during morning operations. I didn't know if I was impressed or horrified. Romance, or something like it, started in subtle, strange ways. I caught the alien watching me with what I could only interpret as fascination. Its observations were technical, clinical, yet the timing of the comments sometimes made my heart skip, though I'd never admit it aloud. "Your cortisol levels and smile patterns indicate high negotiation potential in mating contexts," it said one evening as I poured cereal. I nearly choked on my milk. What?" I sputtered. "It is a metric," it said flatly. Not a suggestion. Yet it is relevant. I had no idea if that was a compliment or an invasion of privacy. Both? Definitely both. And yet, absurdly, I found myself oddly flattered. The alien began scheduling my life like a high-stakes military campaign. Simple things, like checking my phone, became subjects of strategic oversight. Notification response times exceed optimal parameters. Social efficiency compromised. I ignored it once and paid the price. It recalculated my entire evening plan around the error. I ended up attending a neighborhood meeting I didn't want to go to, because apparently my social influence radius required calibration. Adult humor crept in naturally. It wasn't overt. The alien had no concept of human modesty, sexual tension, or embarrassment, yet its meticulous observation of me included subtle notes about the way I dressed, how I moved, how I reacted to stimuli. That alone created awkward, hilarious moments. I started second-guessing every action, only for the alien to interpret my flustered reactions as high-stakes behavioral experiments. The absurdity reached a peak when I realized that the alien wasn't just analyzing me, it wanted everything. My apartment, my schedule, my hobbies, my romantic life, nothing was safe from tactical optimization. I tried resisting. I tried hiding. I even tried bribery with chocolate. None of it worked. Each attempt at independence was met with a calm, hilarious counter. And that was the start of my life being run like a battlefield, with me as the unwitting general under the command of a blind alien strategist who considered obsession with me a legitimate form of interstellar duty. By the end of the first week, I had stopped arguing and started watching. Watching the alien's methods, watching how it calculated every possible human response, and weirdly, watching myself react under this impossible pressure. Somewhere between absurd efficiency checks, tactical coffee breaks, and notes about my pillow arrangement, I felt a strange mix of frustration, amusement, and something I didn't want to admit, intrigue. And maybe, just maybe, attraction. It started with the wardrobe. I didn't realize my life could be judged so harshly on fabric choices until the alien announced, in its calm, analytical tone, that my clothing selections were suboptimal for social engagement and potential mating interactions. I laughed. Loudly. The alien did not. Instead, it began organizing my closet with military precision. Socks were sorted by elastic strength and color contrast efficiency, shirts ranked according to perceived dominance and approachability, and pants were folded and stacked to maximize floor space while minimizing friction between fabrics. I tried to protest, picking up a plain t-shirt and tossing it on the bed. The alien tilted slightly, whatever that meant in alien body language, and said, "Incorrect. That choice reduces interpersonal influence by 13%. I sighed and surrendered. Dating became the next battlefield. The alien insisted on scheduling interactions with a precision that rivaled NASA's space launches. Every dinner, every coffee, every text exchange had to follow its strategic protocol. I was supposed to smile at exactly 2.3 seconds into conversation, nod precisely 3 times, and avoid discussing any topics that could trigger suboptimal emotional resonance. Naturally, it all went horribly, absurdly wrong. On the first attempt, I ended up spilling a glass of wine across the table while trying to follow its advice to tilt my head for optimal engagement. The alien, of course, immediately calculated the precise trajectory and velocity of the liquid, muttering numbers under its breath. The date stared at me with wide eyes, horrified, while the alien scribbled in a small device. Redirection of potential embarrassment mitigated by rapid apology sequencing, it said. I wondered if it was speaking to me, the date, or both. Adult humor began creeping into every scenario. The alien had no understanding of human subtlety or modesty, so whenever I tried to flirt or respond to flirtation, it interpreted it as a strategic mating maneuver, requiring precise counteractions. A playful touch on my shoulder was meticulously logged, analyzed, and categorized as a tactical signal, which I found both terrifying and weirdly flattering. The date ended with confused smiles, awkward laughter, and a whispered promise from the alien to recalibrate future interactions for maximum success. Sleep was next. I had thought staying up late and binge-watching shows was harmless. The alien disagreed. It insisted on monitoring my circadian rhythm with the zeal of a general preparing troops for battle. Lights had to be dimmed at exactly 2,217 hours, bedroom temperature adjusted to 19.6 degrees Celsius, and every pillow arranged for optimal spinal alignment. I tried to sneak a late-night snack, and the alien intercepted me with the precision of a chess master, holding a plate aloft with the words, "Deviation from schedule detected. Caloric intake requires recalculation for strategic advantage." I rolled my eyes, but it was oddly charming, the way it cared. Even mundane social interactions turned into absurdly elaborate exercises. Walking to the corner store became an urban engagement operation. I was coached on greetings to neighbors, the precise pace to approach the clerk, and the correct number of seconds to hold eye contact. I attempted to ignore its instructions once, only to find myself locked in a tactical standoff with the cashier, who gave me a confused look as the alien whispered, "Adjust vocal intonation to maintain influence equilibrium." I muttered a quiet, "Thanks," and left, feeling simultaneously ridiculous and alive in a way I had never felt before. Romantic tension thickened with each passing day. The alien would occasionally comment on my physical responses to stimuli, the way I reacted to certain phrases, how my heart rate shifted during minor stress, and even how my pupils supposedly conveyed subconscious attraction. It spoke in the most clinical, deadpan tone, but the words carried an awkward, undeniable weight. "Your pulse indicates increased receptiveness to tactile stimulation," it said while handing me a cup of tea. I blushed hard. I told myself I was imagining it, even as my stomach did a somersault. Comedy reached its peak when it decided to enforce its own version of relationship coaching. It suggested I try online dating with a spreadsheet of potential partners ranked by genetic compatibility, humor quotient, and strategic leverage. I blindly followed, only to find myself arranging a coffee date with someone whose favorite hobby was extreme ironing, a hobby so absurd I couldn't stop laughing. The alien, however, was completely serious, muttering about optimal human interaction strategy, while I scrolled through profiles. Its obsession escalated in small, almost endearing ways. Every human choice was catalogued. Every meal, text, or sigh logged for strategic potential. Adult comedy came naturally from these scenarios. I tried to sneak in some spontaneous fun, a drink at a bar, a flirtatious comment to a stranger, but the alien would analyze it like a field commander reviewing a mission report. Sometimes, I'd feel slightly embarrassed, other times, oddly appreciated. It was a mix of chaos, humor, and attraction I had never encountered. By the end of the second week, my life was no longer my own. Dates, meals, sleep, clothing, and even casual interactions were influenced, or outright dictated, by the alien strategist. And yet, amidst the chaos, I began to see the pattern in its obsession. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even judgmental in the human sense. It simply wanted everything: my habits, my schedule, my social presence, and in some strange, indirect way, my attention. And somewhere, buried under tactical charts and calculated schedules, was a spark of something human, or at least human adjacent, something that hinted at affection. By then, I had started to consider that maybe, just maybe, letting this blind, obsessive alien take over my life wasn't entirely the worst thing. After all, who else would care about the exact timing of my blinks, the precision of my smiles, and the strategic placement of my cereal box on a shelf? It was terrifying, exhausting, absurd, and maybe the beginning of something far more complicated than I could have imagined. By the third week, my life had become a bizarre combination of high-stakes comedy and strategic warfare. The alien's obsession had escalated far beyond wardrobe, sleep schedules, and dating tactics. Every step I took, every word I spoke, every minor human choice was now subject to its meticulous scrutiny. Even brushing my teeth felt like a covert operation monitored by a cosmic overlord with no eyes but perfect perception. I tried rebelling, of course. Small acts, minor infractions, nothing too bold, staying up an extra hour, eating chips at midnight, letting a text go unanswered, but each attempt was met with a quiet, unyielding countermeasure. It was like trying to cheat in a chess match against a master who could see every piece on every board in every parallel universe. One evening, I attempted the boldest rebellion yet, skipping a date arranged by the alien. The plan was simple: feign a sudden migraine, retreat to my apartment, and binge-watch old sitcoms while eating ice cream. Simple, harmless, human behavior. I thought I had outsmarted it. I was wrong. Half an hour later, I got a text. Migraine detected. Hydration and electrolytes suboptimal. Consider immediate ingestion of H2O and sodium chloride. I froze, then realized the message had been sent from the alien, sitting silently on my couch with an analytical expression I could only describe as mildly terrifying. I groaned. How did you? Analysis is ongoing, it said, as if that explained everything. Deviation from schedule detected. Corrective measures required. Corrective measures involved me sitting upright, holding a glass of water exactly 2 inches from my lips, while it timed my sips with a precision that made me feel like I was auditioning for some absurd Olympic sport. And yet, somewhere between the ridiculous instructions and the awkward intimacy of shared space, I felt a pang of something unexpected: warmth. Maybe affection. Maybe curiosity. I wasn't sure. The chaos spilled into public life as well. Grocery shopping became an urban battlefield. I had intended to buy milk, eggs, and cereal, an ordinary human errand. The alien, however, insisted on conducting a strategic assessment of social interactions, aisle navigation, and potential romantic opportunities. I tried to ignore its whispered advice: stand to the left, smile at the cashier, check produce for optimal freshness. But as soon as I deviated, it would whisper again, recalibrating my every move. A fellow shopper gave me a puzzled look as I nodded excessively, and held a melon at chest level for an uncomfortable amount of time. Adult humor erupted naturally from these interactions. I found myself blushing and laughing simultaneously as the alien interpreted casual human reactions as strategic opportunities. A brief accidental brush of hands while reaching for bread was catalogued in its memory as critical contact, potential escalation to intimate interaction. I couldn't tell whether to be mortified, amused, or flattered. Work wasn't safe either. The alien decided my professional life required optimization. Every email had to follow a calculated tone and timing, every phone call required pre-strategized pauses, and every casual conversation with coworkers became a potential influence maneuver. I tried to improvise once, telling a joke about office coffee, and it immediately pulled me aside. Humor deployed inefficiently. Social dominance not reinforced. Reassess delivery and retry at calculated interval. I laughed awkwardly, realizing I was now a puppet in a theater of tactical absurdity, but it was strangely enjoyable. The dating adventures reached a new level of ridiculousness. One date involved an elaborate protocol for sequential attraction, a plan the alien had devised with multiple contingency charts. Each comment I made was analyzed, each laugh timed, and every glance catalogued. I accidentally tripped over a chair while following one of its instructions and landed on the date's lap. The alien, unmoved, recorded the incident as unexpected tactical engagement, success probability, 73%. I sat there mortified, the date's eyes wide, the alien's satisfaction palpable. Somehow, I survived the evening, but my dignity was scattered across the restaurant floor. Romantic tension reached a fever pitch during these moments of absurdity. The alien occasionally made comments so clinical yet intimate that I didn't know whether to laugh, blush, or roll my eyes. Physiological response indicates heightened receptivity to proximity, it said while standing unusually close as I reached for my coffee. My pulse raced. I was both terrified and inexplicably drawn to its attention. Adult humor and romantic tension blended perfectly, The blind alien strategist had no concept of flirting, yet its obsession was turning into something unmistakably affectionate. Cohabitation became a constant battlefield of hilarity. Household chores were now military operations, dishes scrubbed in specific sequences, laundry folded to maximize space and minimize friction, furniture shifted for optimal movement efficiency. I tried to sneak in small indulgences, a glass of wine, a late-night snack, a romantic comedy on the couch, but each was meticulously catalogued and countered by the alien. My life was chaotic, yes, but the chaos carried a strange rhythm, a dance between human spontaneity and alien precision. By the end of the week, I realized I wasn't just surviving the alien's obsession, I was participating, albeit reluctantly, in its strategic vision of my life. There was humor in the absurdity, thrill in the tactical absurdity of everyday activities, and undeniable tension in the subtle, awkward romance developing between us. My life had become a battlefield of hilarity and chaos, orchestrated by a blind alien strategist who wanted everything, and I was beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, I wanted a little of it too. By the fourth week, life with the alien strategist had settled into a bizarre rhythm that was part chaos, part comedy, and surprisingly, part affection. The earlier battles over wardrobe, sleep schedules, and grocery runs had given way to an even more elaborate game, romance. Or at least, the alien's version of it. I wasn't sure whether to call it love, obsession, or some combination that had no earthly name, but there was no denying the tension every time it glanced, or rather, registered, me with that precise, calculating focus. The climax began one evening with what the alien called a full tactical engagement for maximal attraction. I had been warned earlier in the day, every movement, every word, every subtle expression would be under scrutiny. The plan involved timed conversational peaks, intentional pauses, strategic proximity, and precisely calculated touches of hand and shoulder. I stared at the schedule it had laid out on the counter, laughed, and decided to play along. If life was going to be a war of absurdity, I was going to improvise some chaos of my own. Dinner was the battlefield. Each bite, sip, and laugh was measured against the alien's notes, but I deliberately deviated from the plan, taking longer pauses, slightly mispronouncing words, and even tossing in random, inappropriate jokes. The alien tilted its head, analyzing my every move, muttering calculations under its breath, and for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar flicker in its behavior. Confusion. Surprise. Maybe even delight. Then came the first real physical test, reaching for the same piece of bread. Our hands brushed, and the alien froze, like a general caught mid-command, recording the event with meticulous attention. I felt my pulse quicken, realizing that despite its obsession with strategy, it had no concept of subtle human cues, and that made the touch electric, awkward, and hilarious all at once. Tactile contact logged. Emotional response under review, it said. I laughed, nervously, and moved my hand slightly, testing whether I could provoke more reactions. I could. After dinner, we moved to the couch, or rather, the couch battlefield, now meticulously arranged for optimal interpersonal dynamics. The alien continued its commentary. Spatial positioning at 37-degree angle maximizes eye contact efficiency. Proximity tolerance within 0.6 meters ensures comfort, while increasing intimacy probability. I stared at it, then deliberately scooted closer. It paused, sensors, or whatever they were, adjusting, muttering calculations that sounded like numbers I didn't understand but felt thrilling all the same. Adult comedy erupted naturally as our interactions grew more intimate yet absurdly technical. Each laugh, blush, and minor touch was analyzed and catalogued as a potential escalation in the strategic relationship. I teased, it calculated, I overreacted, it adjusted. Somewhere between the absurd commentary and the awkward tension, something very human happened. I started to enjoy it. Not just the chaos, not just the humor, but the attention, the obsession, the precision of its focus on me. There was a kind of affection buried under all that strategy, and for the first time, I felt like the center of the alien's universe in a way that was oddly flattering. The moment of climax came unexpectedly, during a playful argument over whether the remote should be positioned at optimal distance for operational relaxation. I grabbed it first, and our hands collided again, lingering longer than protocol would allow. The alien paused, a tiny, almost imperceptible tilt, and said, "Deviation from plan, tolerated." That statement, mechanical, clinical, sent a jolt through me. I realized the alien had crossed some invisible line from obsessive strategist to something resembling caring. We laughed about it, of course, because laughter was safer than acknowledgement. But then it said, "Analysis complete. Objective achieved. Human compliance and engagement at maximal levels. Emotional variables favorable." I knew that in alien terms, this meant something akin to affection. I responded with a teasing smirk, saying, "Does that mean you like me?" It paused. "I find your behavioral patterns highly advantageous to my strategic satisfaction," it said, carefully measured words. But then, almost imperceptibly, it added, "Also, desirable in a non-strategic context." I nearly choked. There it was, the first hint of acknowledgement that its obsession had evolved into something resembling human romantic interest. Adult comedy and romance collided in my chest, leaving me breathless, embarrassed, and laughing at the absurdity of it all. From there, the chaos transformed into a new rhythm. We continued living together, but now there was space for both strategy and spontaneity. Dates were still meticulously planned, meals still analyzed, and interactions still catalogued, but each came with playful improvisation. I allowed myself small acts of rebellion, knowing the alien would notice but might just enjoy the challenge. And somewhere in all the tactical charts, spreadsheets, and calculated approaches, we began to flirt with each other, not clumsily, but intentionally, in our own absurd, chaotic way. The final comedic flourish came when the alien attempted to calculate human humor as part of a romantic efficiency assessment. It told a joke so awkward, so technically precise, that I nearly fell off the couch laughing. It didn't laugh, of course, but its expression, or whatever passed for expression, was almost proud. I leaned over, nudged it, and said, "You're ridiculous." It tilted slightly, as if weighing the comment. Observation noted. Ridiculousness, acceptable. And that was the new normal, a life of structured chaos, absurd comedy, and growing, unmistakable romantic tension. The alien strategist wanted everything, my life, my habits, my attention, and somehow, I wanted it all back, too. Each day was a battlefield of laughter, awkwardness, and affection. We had both learned to adapt. I learned to play along, and it learned that not all variables could, or should, be controlled. Together, we were a perfect, chaotic, adult comedy experiment in love.